I've spent most of my life believing that strength was measured by how much I could carry without slowing down. I thought that as long as I kept my head down, my voice steady, and my schedule full, I was winning at life. But the truth is, I wasn't living. I was performing. I was an actress in a play I didn't remember auditioning for, playing a role that was slowly draining the color out of my world. If you're listening to this right now, I want you to take a breath. Not the shallow, hurried breath we all take when we're checking off a to-do list, but a real one that reaches the bottom of your lungs. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't a story of grand gestures or loud explosions. It's a story about the quietest moment of my life, and how that silence finally allowed me to hear myself for the first time. I've always loved the sound of the rain in Portland. It has a way of blurring the edges of the world, making everything feel a bit more private, a bit more contained. It was a Tuesday evening in November, the kind of day where the sky stays a bruised shade of gray from sunrise to sunset. I had just finished a 10-year cycle at my firm, a decade of climbing and striving that had left me with a prestigious title and an empty well inside my chest. Marcus, my partner of 7 years, met me at the door when I got home. He didn't say much at first. He just took my coat, his hands lingering on my shoulders for a second longer than usual. There was a groundedness to him that evening, a specific kind of intentionality that I usually overlooked in my haste to get to the next thing. The house smelled of lavender and something earthy, like rain-soaked moss. He didn't ask me about the board meeting or the final contracts. Instead, he led me toward the living room, where the only light came from the dim glow of the street lamp outside and a few scattered candles. He told me he wanted to give me something, but it wasn't a gift I could hold in my hands. He asked me if I trusted him, and even though my mind was still racing with emails and deadlines, I realized that I did. Deeply. He produced a length of dark, heavy silk. It was cool to the touch, almost liquid in my hands. He asked if he could cover my eyes, not to hide the world, but to help me see what was inside. I hesitated for a fraction of a second. As someone who spent every waking hour in control, surrendering my sight felt like surrendering my armor. But the exhaustion in my bones was heavier than my need for control. I nodded, and as the silk was tied, the world went dark, and the sounds of the room became my entire universe. He guided me to the old velvet armchair by the window. I could hear the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway, a sound I hadn't truly noticed in years. Every creak of the floorboards under Marcus's feet felt amplified. I sat there, my hands gripped tightly on the armrests, my body braced for something I couldn't define. I was waiting for the surprise, expecting a party or a speech, but the silence just grew. Then, I heard it, a soft, unfamiliar weight in the air. The front door hadn't opened, but I felt the atmosphere shift. There was another presence in the room. My pulse quickened, an instinctive spike of adrenaline hitting my system. I heard a floorboard groan near the entryway, a slow, deliberate step that didn't belong to Marcus. Marcus stayed near me, his hand resting lightly on the back of my chair, a silent reassurance that I was safe. "Don't move," Marcus whispered, his voice so low it was almost a vibration. "Just stay right where you are. You don't need to do anything." The instruction felt foreign. My entire life had been defined by what I did. To be told I didn't need to do anything felt like being told the gravity had suddenly shifted. The newcomer didn't rush. I could hear the soft rustle of wool, the slow, even pace of someone who wasn't afraid of being noticed. He stopped a few feet away from me. I could feel the warmth of another person's energy, a steady, calm presence that didn't demand my attention, yet commanded the entire room. When he spoke, his voice was like aged whiskey, smooth, deep, and carrying a weight of quiet authority. "It's a heavy thing," the stranger said, "to be the one who holds everything together." He didn't say hello. He didn't introduce himself. He spoke directly to the exhaustion I'd been hiding, even from Marcus. He wasn't aggressive. He was observant. He described the way my shoulders had become permanent anchors for other people's expectations. He talked about the mask of competence I wore like a second skin. He moved around the chair, his footsteps creating a circle of sound that felt like a protective barrier. He told me that tonight, for the first time in a decade, I had permission to be invisible. He explained that most people spend their lives trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be relevant. But there is a rare, terrifying power in being allowed to simply exist without a purpose. Lean back, he said softly. I didn't move at first. I was still sitting upright, my spine a rigid line of defense. Not because I told you to, he added, but because the chair is already there to catch you. It has been there the whole time. I realized then that I was holding myself up, even while sitting down. I was using my own muscles to fight the very furniture meant to support me. Slowly, I let my weight settle. I felt the velvet against the back of my neck. I felt my hands unclasp from the armrests, my fingers falling open like petals. The stranger began to talk about the concept of permission. He argued that we spend our lives waiting for someone else to tell us it's okay to stop, to rest, to fail, or to just change our minds. He said that intimacy isn't about two people becoming one. It's about two people giving each other the space to be exactly who they are when no one is watching. As he spoke, memories I had suppressed began to float to the surface. I remembered being 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, feeling the weight of my parents' pride because I had gotten the highest grade in the class. I remembered the silent vow I made then to never let that pride fade, to always be the best, the strongest, the most reliable. I saw a decade of office lights, of missed dinners, of forced smiles at holiday parties where I felt like a ghost. I started to cry. It wasn't a dramatic, sobbing release. It was just a quiet, steady stream of tears that soaked into the silk of the blindfold. I wasn't crying because I was sad. I was crying because the stranger was right. I was so tired of holding the world up. Marcus moved then, his hand finding mine. He didn't squeeze it. He just let his palm rest against mine, a silent acknowledgement that he had seen the mask, too, and he was glad it was finally coming off. You've been performing for so long, the stranger whispered, his voice now right beside my ear. But the audience has gone home, Elena. You can take off the costume now. The use of my name sent a shiver through me. I didn't know who this man was, perhaps a friend of Marcus, perhaps a professional guide he had sought out, but in that moment, it didn't matter. He was a mirror reflecting a version of me I had forgotten existed. The room felt like it was expanding. The walls seemed to move outward, leaving me in a vast, quiet space where my breath was the only thing that mattered. The stranger spoke about the strength of stillness. He said that the world tells us that movement is progress, but sometimes the greatest progress happens when we stop moving and let the sediment of our lives settle to the bottom so the water can become clear again. I stayed in that chair for what felt like hours, though it might have only been 20 minutes. The stranger eventually stopped speaking, but his presence remained, a steady anchor in the dark. Marcus stayed by my side, his silent support more profound than any "I love you" he had ever uttered. In that darkness, I realized that I didn't need to earn my place in this house, or in his life, or in the world. I was already here. When Marcus finally reached out and untied the silk, the dim light of the room felt blinding. I blinked, my eyes stinging. The stranger was gone. The door was closed, and the only sound was the rain tapping against the window pane. I looked at Marcus, and for the first time in years, I didn't see a partner I needed to impress or a person I needed to take care of. I saw a man who had seen my soul and decided it was worth protecting. I didn't go back to the firm the next day. I didn't even call them until noon. When I finally did, I didn't apologize for my absence. I told them I was taking a sabbatical, effective immediately. There were questions, of course. There were subtle hints of disappointment and overt expressions of shock. But as I sat in my kitchen, watching the steam rise from my coffee, I realized that their opinions didn't carry the weight they used to. The anchors had been lifted. The weeks that followed were strange and quiet. I had to relearn how to be alone with my thoughts, without a deadline to chase. I had to learn that it was okay to spend an afternoon reading a book or walking through the park without a specific destination. I had to learn that no was a complete sentence, and that my value wasn't tied to my productivity. Marcus and I started talking again, not about our schedules or our finances, but about our fears, our dreams, and the quiet things we had noticed about the world while we were too busy to look. Our relationship shifted from a partnership of efficiency to a partnership of presence. We didn't need to do things together to feel connected. We just needed to be. I think back to that night often. I think about the stranger's voice and the weight of that silk blindfold. I realized that the birthday surprise, or the milestone gift, wasn't the ceremony itself. It was the realization that I had been living in a prison of my own making, and the key had been in my pocket the whole time. I just needed someone to remind me to stop running long enough to reach for it. We all wear masks. We all have roles we play for our bosses, our parents, our children, even our partners. We tell ourselves that these roles are necessary, that they are who we are. But if you take a moment today, I want you to ask yourself, who are you when the lights go down and the audience leaves? Who are you when you finally give yourself permission to be still? Life doesn't change because of a sudden epiphany or a grand event. It changes in the small, quiet moments when we decide to stop performing and start living. It changes when we realize that stillness isn't the absence of life, but the beginning of it. I'm still learning how to be that person, the one who doesn't need to be strong all the time, but I'm getting there. And I can tell you, the air is much easier to breathe on this side of the mask. I hope you find your own moment of stillness today. I hope you find the courage to lean back and let the world catch you, even if it's just for a few minutes. Because you are more than what you do. You are more than the roles you play. You are a person suspended between who you were and who you are becoming, and that is enough. It has always been enough. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever felt like you were just performing your life instead of living it? Was there a moment, however small, that changed the way you see yourself? Sometimes, just putting those feelings into words is the first step toward taking off the mask. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Sleep well, and remember, you have permission to just be.